Before I begin this week's discussion, I want to take a second to remind everybody that next week, September 29th, 2019, the world will be getting a sneak peek or its first glimpse of Pokemon Gen 8 anime Pocket Monsters. Stay tuned to the Templar74 YouTube channel as I discuss all the information around this and what we are going to see. The hype is real. Again, we will talk about that next week on September 29th, 2019. Stay tuned, everybody. And now, on to the actual discussion for this week. A little lackluster, to be honest. Hey everyone, Templar74 here with another episode of PokeTalk, and today's episode of PokeTalk is just going to be a brief little discussion revolving around the latest episode of Pokemon Sun and Moon, episode 140, the Guzlord Invasion episode. And I know I really don't do weekly reviews on Sun and Moon, but I did want to take a second to talk about this episode because it just came off the amazing, momentous episode last week of Ash's Alola League victory, and this was really kind of a conclusion, a wrap-up to that, so I did want to take a second to talk about it. And while there were some very exciting things that happened in this episode, it was a little lackluster, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. This episode, although it was a good episode, reminded me a lot of the Hoopa movie. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in this episode that was just so unnecessary. The whole battle with the Guzlords, although it is interesting to see Guzlord and that amazing godlike voice of his, you know, just all these Guzlords that popped out of nowhere, you combine that with the Tapus, everybody using Z moves. This episode was just like the Hoopa movie all over again. A lot of unnecessary battling, an episode that had great potential and built up a lot of hype, and it kind of fell flat and was lackluster. In my opinion, that was pretty much this episode. But there were some interesting things that happened in this episode. First of all, Royal Mask got unmasked in front of Ash, so now Ash knows that Professor Kukui is in fact Royal Mask. Ash's Poipole returned as Nagandel, which is also very interesting here. And of course, we also learn that Ash did indeed tell his friends about his adventure in the parallel world back in episode 100 and 101. I was interested on whether that was actually going to show up or if it was going to be referenced, and sure enough it did, so I really am taking real good interest in that. And of course, we got introduced to another Pokemon in Kukui's team, which I do want to take a second to talk about. We learned that he also owns a Lucario. So now we know he has 3 Pokemon, a Bravery, an Incineroar, and Lucario here. And basically we know that the next battle between him and Ash is going to be a 6-on-6, and people had been speculating, oh, well, he's going to have probably a Gen 8 Pokemon. I'm skeptical of that. I think we're probably going to see more along the lines of fighting Pokemon from the previous generations. None really pop into my head. He might possibly own a Hypno-chan, Hypno-Lee, or something along those lines. But as far as the other two, I'm really drawing a blank. But I am skeptical that we are going to see a Gen 8 Pokemon from Professor Kukui. I just don't see that happening. It's possible, not very likely in my opinion. But yeah, essentially I did want to take a second to talk about that. But yeah, the episode though. The episode, like I said, was just lackluster to me. It kind of reminded me of the Hoopa movie, and we all know how that turned out. But although it was a good episode, and there were some touching moments in there, and there were some action-packed things, and there were some fantastically animated scenes, as an episode, it just fell flat in my opinion, and it really kind of dropped off from last week's episode. I mean, how could you top last week's episode? But just because of the momentous history that was made in that episode, this episode really did not do that justice. Although, like I said, it was a good episode, and there were some very intriguing things that I did see in this episode, and the continuity, you really have to appreciate that. But anyway, those were my thoughts. Like I said, as an episode overall, I give this episode really a 5 out of 10. It could have been better. It was a decent episode. Could have been better in my opinion. But as always, in the comments section down below, let me know what you guys thought about all this. What were your thoughts on the episode? What are your thoughts on Professor Kukui's team? What could he have other than a Lucario, Incineroar, and a Bravery? Just let me know what your guys' thoughts are about all this in the comments section down below. Because as always, I enjoy hearing from you. Alright everyone, as always, Templar74 signing off. Have a great day everybody, and I'll talk to you all next time. Goodbye everybody.